Joining us now is the head of Hamas's political bureau, Khaled Meshaal. Thanks so much for being with us. Are you concerned, first of all, that the position of some Western countries that they will only deal with non-Hamas members of the government may once again split the Palestinians?
In the name of God, the positions of these countries are not acceptable. We will not abide by them. As Palestinians, we agree that everybody should deal with us as a national unity government, a united government, without any discrimination between the ministers.
But what does that mean? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what does that mean? Are you saying that you will refuse aid, for example, diplomatic contacts from countries that say they'll only deal with your finance minister, for example, Sami Zeidan?
Aid should be channeled through the Minister of Finance. Let them give their financial aid through the normal procedures. That is the Minister of Finance. Dr. Fayyad is known by the international community. As to the issue of contacts, I think Palestinians are in agreement that we shall not surrender to this game of discriminating between ministers.
Some of your key Western donors are saying you haven't met the conditions of the quartet yet. In that regard, have you failed to succeed fully there?
The conditions of the quartet are not our criteria, but rather the interests of the Palestinian people and the issues that are common to the Palestinian factions. This was what we agreed upon in Mecca. Furthermore, we think that the agenda agreed upon in Mecca fulfills all political requirements for the phase we are in.
But that's not what the quartet is saying. They're saying that your insistence on the right to resist conflicts with their demand that you stop all violence.
I said the quartet's demands are not our criteria. The quartet is not God. The quartet does not have the criteria to go by. Unfortunately, the U.S. administration is trying to establish a frame of reference for international relations. This is wrong, because our region has its own conditions, specificities and convictions. The international community has to respect our convictions, especially since we are implementing the rules of democracy. Hamas did not come to power by resorting to arms. On the contrary, Hamas came to power through ballot boxes, and the international community has to respect the Palestinians' will that was expressed through elections.
Since your key Western donors haven't fully lifted the sanctions yet, is this government soon going to face the same challenges that the previous one faced? How to pay salaries, how to pay debt? How are you going to deal with that scenario?
I don't think that the international community will maintain its previous stance of besieging the Palestinian government and punishing the Palestinian people.
But you still haven't, sorry to interrupt, but you still haven't got a full resumption of all the aid you need. Even your finance minister is warning that he can't go on for long without a resumption of international aid.
Simply put, the positions of the Arab and Islamic countries will definitely be different. Hopefully, following the Riyadh summit of the Arab League, there will be new practical steps by the Arab countries in order to implement the Khartoum summit's recommendation that defined Arab financial obligations toward the Palestinian government. This means that there has been a true change and the previous situation will not continue, that the hard and complete siege which was imposed on the Palestinian people.
For 1 year, the attempt to count on Arab and Islamic support didn't work for the previous government. Is that the plan B for this government?
By the way, last year, even the financial obligations of the Arab countries were paralyzed because of the restrictions imposed on financial transfers. Now, we are witnessing a new era. Under a national unity government without the internal Palestinian splits, we now expect support by the Arab Islamic countries to cover an important part of the Palestinian government's needs, in addition to the contribution of some European countries and members of the international community. This will change the situation, and the siege will not remain as it was. The U.S. administration will realize that it is facing a new situation. It will have to respect it and to change its unjust policies.
Why don't you state clearly what you mean by the 1967 borders? Aren't you implicitly recognizing the state of Israel?
We are talking about a Palestinian state which does not exist yet. As a Palestinian, my concern is to fulfill my people's aspirations to end occupation and establishing a country we need as Palestinians. As for Israel, it is none of my concern, because Israel is the enemy who occupied our land.
But it is of concern, to interrupt, but it is of concern to you, surely. Israel is intertwined with your life. If you're asking for a Palestinian state on only 1967 borders, doesn't that mean you've given up your claim to 1948 territory?
هذا البرنامج الوطني المشترك.
This is our common national program. All factions will keep their own programs. We agreed upon was to establish our state according to 1967 borders, with Jerusalem as its capital, and to ensure the right of refugees to return.
وعاصمتها القدس مع حق العودة.
How do you respond to those who say you could have gone further? You could have called for an end to all attacks on Israeli civilians in non-1967 territory.
شوف الممارسة المقاومة هي من مسؤوليات الفصائل.
Resistance is the matter for the faction to decide rather than the government. Some texts were agreed upon in the National Conciliation document, namely how to manage our battle, how to coordinate among the various factions to resist the occupation. Israel and US had refused the existence of resistance in the national program that was founded in the document for the government.
في برنامج الوطني الذي تأسست الحكومة على أساسه.
These details will be determined by the factions, while the government will provide encouragement and support, as well as political framework of the Palestinian actions on the ground.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that is in the government's program. It's not only an issue to be dealt with by the Palestinian factions.
أنا قلت يعني فرق بين تثبيت السياسة والمبدأ.
As I said, the difference between principles and policies. The government is indeed involved with this matter through the political agenda that laid the foundation of the government. However, resistance is the responsibility of the factions. As Palestinian, we will be able to agree on the details and mechanism of actions for our struggle. In terms of civilians, or what is described as civilians, it is not an issue we are going to disagree over. As a matter of fact, more than 10 years ago, we had suggested to the Israelis that we keep civilians from both sides away from the conflict. However, Israel refused our offer. The issue of civilians is not a problem. The core of the problem is the Israeli position, not the Palestinian one.
So are you saying that it is possible that Hamas would call for an end to attacks on Israeli civilians as a matter of policy?
This is possible, provided that the other side also commits to our civilians out of the conflict. But Israel refused this condition more than 10 years ago.
But why not take the moral high ground and declare civilians off limits in this conflict?
Hamas done more than that. In 2005, Hamas and all Palestinian factions agreed on the truce initiative for 1 year. The agreement was reached in Cairo in March 2005. We did not only stop targeting civilians, but we also halted all of our operations. We asked Israel to stop its aggression and to release the detainees, but it did not. Thus, the problem does not lie in the Palestinians' position or initiatives. In 2003, we also agreed on a truce. Then, in 2005, a few months ago, we also agreed to stop launching rockets from Gaza. However, it is always Israel that is violating and breaking these agreements. In a nutshell, Israel wants the Palestinians to stop their resistance, but at the same time, to do whatever it wants. This is impossible.
But Israel would say that it doesn't deliberately attack civilians, but you do. How would you respond to that?
How is that? How then would you describe the demolitions of houses, the confiscations of lands, striking houses and civilians' vehicles with rockets and Apache helicopters? What do they call all this? The Palestinian people in their entirety is made of civilians. Israel does not target only the armed men. It kills children and women. 1/3 of the victims of the latest intifada are children and school students. Israel has destroyed thousands of houses, destroyed the agricultural crops, attacked the Palestinians, their lands, their holy sites, uprooted more than 1 million olive trees from the Palestinian lands. Israel is immoral and perpetrates open aggression on all Palestinian people. Thus, the problem doesn't lie with the Palestinian or Arab position. The problem always lies within the Israeli position.
Hamas's charter calls for a restoration of all historic Palestinian territory without making any distinction. Hasn't your position changed now that you've signed up to a government program that recognizes the 1967 borders?
نفرق أخي الكريم بين ما اتفقت عليه الفصائل وبين
We differentiate between what was agreed upon by the factions, the joint national political platform, and between the political agendas of each faction. Hamas is committed to its platform that's known vis-à-vis our people and our national Palestinian rights. This will not change. These are historic facts that no one can renounce. There is a joint national political platform that we are committed to implementing, but each faction retains its own agenda and convictions too. This is known to all.
ويبقى لكل فصيل برنامج وقناعاته. هذا شيء معروف لدى القاصي والداني.
But your position has changed. At the beginning of the Palestinian Authority, you did not participate in any of the political process, in any elections, because you would not recognize any compromise on Palestinian territory. Today, you've signed up to a government program that does that.
هذا صحيح بمعنى أنه حماس عندما دخلت مجال العمل السياسي.
This is true. When Hamas engaged in politics by taking power, we embarked on a new era requiring Hamas to adopt new political approaches and endeavors, especially within what we agree upon as Palestinians. This is an important page of our history because of the first time we have a true national unity government, a political platform between all the Palestinian forces. This is a new era. Hamas responded to what was required, but this does not mean that all the factions have to change their declared programs and policies. We promise our people that Hamas is committed to recovering all the rights of the Palestinian people.
حماس ملتزمة أمام شعبها بكل حقوق الشعب الفلسطيني.